Why didn't you tell me what happened to my legs?
How could we? We had just recovered you. Now listen to me. It is extremely dangerous for you up there. I can only safeguard you from them down here.
Safeguard me from who?
The new sci-fi thriller The Signal stars Lawrence Fishburne and with every plot turn keeps moviegoers on the edge of their seats. Hi, I'm Mike Sargent and this is Arise on Screen. I recently sat down with filmmaker Will Eubank and I asked him to explain the intriguing premise of this film.
Signal is about some kids who go on a road trip. They're from MIT. One kid's taking his girlfriend across the country and they're in sort of a tiff with a hacker. And they get to the Southwest, something happens, and they disappear. And they wake up in some sort of facility or government facility, and they're told that they may or may not have had contact with some other beings or something, and they can't tell them where they found them or how they found them, but they need their help remembering what happened to them. And from there, it sort of becomes a cat and mouse chase through their minds of what's really going on and what's happening.
Okay, well, making a movie like this, which has a lot of contrast, and I'm going to come back to it, and you're a DP, what was the biggest challenge for you stepping into the director's chair, having been a DP and being a DP as well? And for those who don't know what a DP is.
Yeah, the cameraman, the shooter, the guy who lights it.
Director of photography.
Director of photography, yes. You know, it's tricky. I feel like it's tricky sometimes to separate yourself from the visuals and to make sure that you are chasing the story and not just what the movie looks like. And as a cinematographer, I've always told people being a cinematographer or a DP is kind of like being the captain of a pirate ship.
Okay.
And the director is sort of the British noble on that pirate ship. So he's not really in direct control of the crew, but by being the British noble, he's in charge of the captain of the pirate ship.
He's the top guy.
Yeah, but so it's a weird, being a director, you're sort of separated from everybody, and even though you're sort of commanding where this ship is going to go, you're not directly touching particular things and affecting things like that. You're really just dealing with the story and the actors and the sort of scope of everything.
Well, now, this story is, the first act doesn't even seem like a science fiction film. It seems like it's setting me up for something completely different, and I didn't even know it was going in to see the film. Is that on purpose?
Yeah.
It's a blend of genres, it seems to me.
It's definitely a genre bender. I'm a big fan of movies that maybe, you know, it's weird. I don't really think of myself as a genre filmmaker. I just think of myself as a storyteller per se. And I guess when you're making a story, you want each part of that story to be as authentic as you can make it. And somehow, you know, like when you've decided to give it a science fiction element or a genre element, I still wanted to make the start really real and feel like you're really in these characters' lives and you're really seeing a piece of them. So that when something crazy happens and the movie just flips on its head suddenly to another place, you're just left there going like, whoa, what?
Like the characters.
Yeah, like what is happening? And you're really from their perspective and you're seeing it from their viewpoint.
Okay, well, I have to ask you, you know, you've got one of the most iconic actors of our time and who's in one of the most iconic films as an iconic character. How did you get Lawrence Fishburne to be in your film and what made him interested in doing it?
You know, somehow in the casting process, his folks were sent the script and he just picked it up and read it, I guess. And you never know, you know, if your project's going to actually make it all the way to their hands and all these things. And I guess he called me and said, hey, man, I read your script. He didn't even know anything about me. He hadn't seen any of my work or seen anything else. No much. He just was like, look, I really like this story. And I picked it up. I started reading it, and I really couldn't stop reading it, which let me know it was a cool story, and I want to do it. And I was like, oh, wow. My God. Yeah, wow. You're like, suddenly, you know.
That's like Twilight Zone.
Yeah, yeah. It was just so exciting. I just remember thinking like, oh, my God, my character, Damon, is going to come to life through
Lawrence Fishburne.
Yeah.
Now, what was it like working with him? What's his process, and how did you approach him?
You know, being a newer filmmaker, there's a part of you that just goes, okay, let's see where this is going to go, and let's see, what is he going to do, and how am I going to respond? And really, you sort of are apprehensive about that a little bit. You're like, oh gosh, like it's Mr. Fishburne. How do I even tell him what's going on? And
right, how do you tell him how to act?
Yeah, exactly. So you're sort of worried about that a little bit, but he's such a good dude, such a caring guy, and so aware of the story and aware of the process that, we would just be talking about things. We talk through different scenes, and it was a real collaborative process, and he brings all that power to it and all that
Clearly,
force.
just his voice alone.
Gravity.
And you have a lot of close-ups on his face, and you really need that.
Yeah.
Now, this, to me, was like a giant Twilight Zone episode. I have to ask, what's your next project? Are you going to stay in this vein? Because your first was science fiction. This is science fiction. Is this your wheelhouse?
Yeah, I don't know. The next couple of things I'm doing, neither one of them actually are science fiction, but they have elements that are still sort of fantastic. So I guess to a certain extent, maybe they're little genre benders as well, but I like the stage of the fantastic, whether it is science fiction or some other genre element. I think it always sort of adds an edge. Yeah, an edge and something a little more dramatic to whatever the actual story is.
Well, the stage of the fantastic, I'm there. Well, I must say, I really enjoyed Lawrence Fishburne in this film, and I have to say I enjoyed him more than I did in the last two Matrix sequels, which were not good sequels. But since we talked about two sequels today, I want to ask both of you about sequels, what your favorite sequels of all time that were actually better than the original. And what's your choice?
Number one, The Empire Strikes Back.
You took my choice, son.
Luke, I am your father.
Yeah, that was a great sequel. That was a really great sequel. And what about you, Chiara?
For more recent movies, Toy Story. The second and the third. I thought every time they were just improving more and more.
Well, I agree with you on the third one. I thought the third one was actually the best out of it. But I want to say this about sequels. I think what makes a good sequel is when you progress the story and the characters. And it's just like a TV series. If you progress the story and the characters, you have a good sequel. If you don't, if it's a retread, it's a bad sequel. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
What do you think makes a good sequel?
Like 22 Jump Street. Anyway, I think you...
They went to college.
I think you need the hook. I mean, the great thing about The Empire Strikes Back is you have this hook. Darth Vader is Luke's father. No one sees that coming, and it's riveting. And once you got the claws in you, what's happening next? I mean, Return of the Jedi, people were waiting on bated breath to see that movie because it was such a great ending.
And you? Any other sequels come to mind, or why?
I think an important trait of a good sequel is also that the film has to stand alone properly. So it can survive without the predecessor, but of course it's connected to it. So I think that could make a really
I agree with that. Well, our sequel to this show will come next week, and I'm Mike Sargent, and we'll be back next week to talk more movies here on Arise on Screen.